Hi, my name is Sridhar Kotamraju. I'm responsible for digital identity and transformation at PNC, including fraud strategies and authentication. Today, I'm joined by Conor from Daon as well to be part of this discussion. In addition to some of the responsibilities I have at PNC, we look into fraud strategies, cross-channel, looking at it in the context of digital identity frameworks, and how do we make it easy for customers from an authentication point of view.
Thank you, Sridhar. Hello, everybody. I'm Conor White. I lead Daon's business in the Americas, including North, South, and Latin America. My team and I are also responsible for a number of global partnerships. I'm a member of Daon's board, and I've been with the company since its early days in 2001. And prior to taking on my current role, I was Daon's Chief Technology Officer for 10 years. I'm a big fan of Daon, a big fan of FIDO, as well. Daon joined FIDO as a board member in 2014, and I was our representative to the FIDO board for 4 years. So I'm very, very familiar with it. And it's a great pleasure to be here today and to present alongside Sridhar. And Sridhar and PNC are just a tremendous customer and very, very innovative in the market. And I think as you go through this session, you'll see some of the really, really cool things that they're doing in the FIDO space. And thank you very much.
And we'll talk about a little bit about PNC. PNC is the seventh largest bank in the US, and with a lot of focus around customer experience and in terms of the transformations, also whether it is related to digital footprint or whether it is related to new products and services. I think today's focus will be more in the context of what we are looking into from a FIDO-centric protocol point of view to make it easy for customer-facing interactions with PNC.
And Daon, a little bit about Daon. We're a global digital identity company, and our purpose is to empower trust between organizations and consumers. Trust needs to be secure, it needs to be validated, and most importantly, it needs to be easy and very easy for people to use. We have many large-scale FIDO customers around the world, and our technology handles tens of millions of authentications per day. In fact, we have a number of customers that regularly report peak transaction loads of 2,000 or more transactions per second. That's the scale of some of the FIDO implementations we're doing. We have a breadth of industry experience across financial services, insurance, healthcare, telecom, and gaming. And we just love customers like PNC, who are trying to take the FIDO technology and digital identity assurance to the whole new level with our customers. And so, yeah.
I think one of the key areas of focus and sort of a unique point that we generally tend to look at is how do we look at this from a convergence of not only from a identity perspective when it comes to the individuals interacting with PNC or their experience online banking, or for that matter, many channels, right? So looking at identity journey of the customers, taking their holistic view cross-channel, and by the way, most importantly, also factoring the threat landscape out there. So how do we factor in the identity assurance levels and make it easy from an authentication point of view? And also make authentication sort of quote unquote eventless in some ways, which means it should be frictionless experience, but also looking into how we mitigate the fraud threats out there. So the convergence of fraud strategies driven intrinsically by the identity attributes or assurance of individuals is what I think makes us unique. And that's actually one of the focus areas as well in terms of the transformation. The other important factor that we have looked into is customer-centric account management or user management functions. How do we make it easy when a fraud does occur? Then how do you make sure from a preventative point of view, you do have some areas to put some additional capabilities in? So that's where we've been also focusing on. And Daon has been instrumental in getting to a higher device assurance level. So that's the terminology we generally use, where we want to make sure we understand the assurance levels, not only from an identity point of view, but also from a device assurance point of view, from an authentication assurance point of view, and make sure that that is a recursive theme managed through a policy and rules engine and so forth. The key attribute here is when fraud does occur, we want to make it easy for customers to be able to get back to their accounts in a FIDO way, so that we don't ask them more questions than obviously you don't need to. How do you make sure that you avoid knowledge-based questions, secret questions, and so forth? And that's where we've been able to partner with Daon, where not only from a successful authentication event point of view, but also from a behind the scenes seamless integration with higher levels of device, so that we now know who the customers are right from the moment of touching the PNC applications, but also we have a clear view into their behaviors. We have a clear view into what their preferences are from an authentication point of view. So the convergence of these two from a fraud and identity is where we have been able to continue our journey. And a lot of innovation is also in parallel happening around these two spaces in partnership with Daon and based on FIDO protocols. The secondary aspect of the fraud and identity intersection is today we know that threat actors exploit controls, vulnerabilities around capabilities across different channels, right? And so the question then becomes is, if me as a common or a normal user getting access to one channel and making sure that that interaction is not only factored from a channel perspective, but also from a customer behavior point of view, then we have to look into things such as identity attributes, the assurance levels of the individuals, and so forth. And one of the areas where PNC has been a leader also is in the area of convergence, where we don't just see the fraud threat in silos, meaning we look at it from a holistic point of view, such as fraud, physical security, and cybersecurity. Because oftentimes in the industry, you have noticed that the threat actors try to exploit, like a physical security attribute, such as an ATM, which is in a different location, and then also try to take advantage of some of the control capabilities in the online channel. So the way to mitigate threats like that would be one way to handle that is bringing in physical security, cybersecurity, and fraud, and at the center sits the identity of the user. And I think that has been pretty well in terms of the results we have seen, and also factors customers' behavior as well. So I would say the intersection of fraud and identity has been something that's a core of one of our strategies at PNC.
So one of the things that delights me about our PNC deployment is that it's a true partnership approach. Since day one in 2019, when we were first selected, we've been working extremely closely with Sridhar and his team, and learning from them and bringing some of our best practices that we've learned from the large-scale deployments we've had around the world, bringing those to bear as well. PNC's vision, as Sridhar has outlined, is really to enable a omni-channel, cross-channel, omni-channel experience for their consumers, such that a single identity is validated once across all those channels. And what that means is we end up with a single picture of the consumer, regardless of which channel they come through, whether it be mobile app, mobile web, contact center, and so on. By bringing their expertise and our best practices together, it's a win-win for both companies, and we're able to enable what we call identity continuity. And identity continuity is really a way of looking at identity from a complete lifecycle perspective: onboarding, proofing, authentication, and recovery. Identity assurance isn't about discrete events. It's been able to bring these together, consolidating a lifetime of disparate cross-channel identity interactions into a single seamless view of the customer. And I think some people talk about orchestration as a way to do that, but orchestration is very limited, because you still have this, it's trying to make the best of a series of discrete things instead of unifying those things in a nice holistic way for the organization and for the consumer. And what's the value of this? It lets organizations such as PNC personalize and continuously optimize the customer experience, regardless of when, where, how, or why the interaction took place, leading to a much better interaction overall between the bank and its customers.
Great. And one of the core areas that we look into is right, how do we not only make it easy for customers at PNC to onboard and interact with authentication or different channels, but also make it easy to not frustrate them, quote unquote, with additional forms of authentication, right? We wanted to make sure the customer's preferences are factored in. We want to make sure we understand the customer's behavior, and not only looking at what they have authenticated with earlier, or what sort of digital attributes that we have had a chance to look into their digital footprints and so on, but also making sure that we preserve the customer experience in line with the channel they're operating in line with the products and services that they're interacting with PNC. So that's been one of the core mantras for us, where customer experience in line with their behaviors or in line with their preferences on how the touch points with various channels occur. And most importantly, the onboarding process should be seamless, which is don't ask for me things that I expect already my bank to know from a customer point of view. And also, how do we make it from a regulatory point of view that we understand the aspects related to the data, we understand the customer's concerns related to the privacy. And so PNC, by policy, we don't store any of the biometrics info. And that's where I think this journey has been very successful. It's an evolution in many ways. It's a transformation journey. And so the point here is we are looking at various threat landscapes from a convergence of fraud, cybersecurity, and physical security point of view, but also trying to make sure the customer's experience and their interaction with PNC is consistent and quote unquote omni experience across all channels at PNC. And other point here is we understand that 2020 has been very challenging for majority of us, and so is there an impact related to that in terms of customers' interactions with their banks? And PNC is also no different, right? We are all dealing with that in the COVID environment. So there are instances where not only in the industry, but also in the bank, where we know that customers want choice in terms of how they want to interact. And so the choice could be not just about logistical flexibility, but also to make sure we also factor in their transactional patterns so that we don't decline a transaction. So whether it is opening up an account, and in the current environment, walking into a branch and opening an account is quite challenging, as most of us would recognize. I think we have figured out a couple of ways where we are facilitating a digital interaction in terms of making it easy in the COVID environment for customers to open their accounts digitally, whether it is serviced through online channels or even in fact to the branch channels. Obviously, it creates more risk and in terms of fraud. So that's where the convergence of fraud and the acquisition or online account opening process would be very key to this experience. And so we have experienced both fraud threats. We've also seen attacks in terms of fraud, whether it is customers opening up an account or synthetic IDs used by individuals posing as normal customers. So there are certain attributes like that in the COVID environment we have definitely factored in. And as I said, fraud is a component, but we try to make sure we strike the balance between risk and fraud, risk and customer experience as well, when it comes to making those decisions.
And from a Daon perspective, obviously we're in the midst of this terrible pandemic, but it's also driving innovation in a number of ways. And again, looking at FIDO and how FIDO is helping with some of that innovation. One of the things we've developed and deployed is in the area of the area of seamless travel. And we developed a system called Verify, which allows people to quickly and safely travel through different environments, whether it's a train or airport environment and so on. And really, you can see this live today at Denver International Airport, one of the busiest airports in the United States. And the system allows you, using a FIDO protected application with effectively a health status within this digital wallet, allows you to quickly and easily go through the process of going through the airport, the security, getting on the train. There's a dedicated car that's been set aside for people that are part of the Verify, and going from the terminal to your gate. And it minimizes contact with surfaces, and it minimizes contact with people. We do everything from the identity verification through the virtual queuing that's required to make sure that we maintain safe distances between people. Again, it's FIDO backed, and it's a part of this continuous innovation approach we take to bringing digital identity to the world in ways that benefit consumers.
One of the things in terms of what we are continuing our journey in terms of digital transformation is to maintain continuity, in whether it is customers, various touch points from customers to the channels, right? That is cross-channel view and so forth. But also the key thing is making sure the privacy aspects are pretty well addressed as well. In the world where you have California privacy, GDPR, and also when we provide strong forms of authentication, we want to make sure customers understand what data is being stored versus not. We also want to make sure we manage the authentication experience in such a way that we don't store any of their biometrics. And that's where this journey has been very focused around. That's where FIDO has played a critical role, and in partnership with Daon. And most importantly, continue to invest in terms of innovation to make it easy, not only for customers, but also for workforce from an authentication and identity maintain point of view.
From my perspective, it's a delight to work with PNC on this journey, to discover the new use cases as they innovate experiences for their consumers. We continue to support that in any way we can, and continue to embrace and drive forward with FIDO and on FIDO standards that are both secure and private and privacy centric for the individual. And on behalf of my company, Daon, it's a pleasure to work with innovators like PNC and superb innovative minds like Sridhar's to come at these challenges and find ways to make us better and drive the industry forward.
Well, thank you for joining us today and allowing us to present the vision and the strategy, we appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to present to you today, and Sridhar and I are available to take any questions you may have.